Once you have Fusion open, I want you to set up preferences so that we can work together on this. We're going to go up here to the upper right where your name is that you sign in on, and you're going to go to Preferences and just set these smaller settings. It'll be good enough to work with just that information. First thing I want you to do is in here, I want you to do Default Model Z Up. The other one is to change the pan, zoom, orbit shortcuts to SolidWorks. That'll allow your middle mouse button to rotate your parts. The next step I want you to go is to Manufacturing. Enable the cloud. That's important for future use for yourself. We won't be using that here, but it's really important. The other thing is we want to come down to Default Units, go to Design, and change it from millimeters to inch. You can do the electronics too, Manufacturing, because the machine will be used as an inch mode, and that will be plenty enough. And you can change this one also to inches. That's fine. Just set that up and we're ready to go with that. Now, since we set our preferences, we can go in and we can all work with the same information. To get a little quick insight of the interface of the software, we have your data panel, which hides and saves all your information. I'm already in a directory. Your home buttons usually looks like that. I choose other ones and I go in and make subfolders on those. And we can make always new folders right here. We can make folders within folders. I'm going to go ahead and start this project by choosing in the create area. I'm not going to go in depth in how to use the software. This is just a project. If you follow the steps, you'll be fine. But the first thing we want to do is hit create sketch. And we're going to choose this plane down here at the bottom. That is the top plane that we're going to choose. So I'm going to choose this plane here. I'm going to choose 2-point rectangle. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a rectangle starting at the origin here. My first point gets locked in there, and I'm going to move it. Do not hit click the second time. You want to put the dimensions, and the dimension of our sign that we're going to be using is 12 inches, and you hit tab. Do not hit enter. If you hit enter, you got to add dimensions. I would say start all over again because I'm not going to get into the dimension part so much. 4 inches. And then we're just going to go fit to screen down here at the bottom. So I have it fit to screen. At any time, I'm going to continue to draw. I'm in the sketch information. I have a sketch palette that tells me everything I'm doing. I'm just going to put 4 circles on the corners. 1 circle here. And before I click a second time, I can actually type in a dimension like 1 inch. And it will lock in there. And notice the color's black. I'm going to choose circle again. And I'm going to add a circle here. I don't care what size it is. I'm going to grab my panel here and move it over here. And then I'm going to add another circle. And these are blue, and the reason they're blue, if I hit escape, I can touch them and I can adjust them anyway. I want them all to be 1 inch. And one of the quick ways, and if you want to get into this software, start learning about constraints, but I'm just going to say I want them all to be equal to that. So I'm going to choose my constraint equal, touch this circle, touch this circle. I want this one to be equal to here, and this one equal to here. What that allows me to do, I'll hit escape to get out of the command. If I change this at any time, they're all driven by that one dimension. Well, the true dimension we want is 1 inch, just to show you that. I'm happy with this. Now we're in our sketch palette. I want to extrude this now. So I'm going to go to finish, and I'm going to create my extrusion. And you notice we started here, I went here. Every time we touch that, it will allow us a new command to do something. So I'm going to choose when I extrude. My sign shape looks like this. I can pull it up or down. I'm going to pull it down at a 1/2 inch. So I'm using 1/2 inch MDF. I'm going to say OK. And you can see I have my basic shape of my sign there. So at this point I want to save it. So I'm going to save it. I'll give it a name and I'll just call it exactly what it is, 4x6 sign. And hit save, and it'll populate my data panel. Now every time I save it, it's just going to update it with different versions. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize hide my data panel by closing that down, and now I have my part here I want to work with. Now I can touch this face right here. I want to add some more detail to make it look like my sign. I'm trying to develop my canvas of it, so I'll select the face here, create a sketch on there. I'll make it fit the screen so I can see everything in there. I'll move my data panel where I can keep it out a little bit out of my way, and I'm going to use this command called offset. And this offset, I'll grab the edge, and it grabs all the edge curves. and I'm going to move it inside. And as I move it inside, it's giving me a negative value that it's requiring, not a positive, negative. So I'm going to type in minus 0.375. We have a groove there. It's already designed in there. And the reason I do the groove there just to show that is because all my geometry that I'm going to do is going to be in this area. And so I'm going to hit finish sketch. I'm happy with that. There's my basic layout of my sign. Now at the bottom here, if I ever wanted to change anything, I can right button mouse click, edit, sketch, and I can change my sign design if I want. If I want it to be 4 by 4, I just change one dimension and it'll change it 4 by 4. And when I finish the sketch, it will update everything I've done. Edit the sketch, change this back to 12, and it's a good basic sign layout students can work with. So I have that done. Next step I want to do, and again, here's our extrusion information that we can change the extrusion, and here's my offset sketch that does that. So I have all three of them. I'm going to start a new sketch because I want to be able to put in my 57 Chevy that. So I'm going to choose sketch again. I'm going to select here. Now this is all about bringing in a DXF or an SVG, and I'm using the SVG file. I'm going to insert. You see all these different, you're going to insert an SVG, a DXF. There's a lot of neat things you can work with this. So I'm going to just use insert SVG, and I'm going to go to my computer and try to find where it is. And here it is. I just happen to put everything in downloads. Easier for me to find. You would have to find it if you put it on a memory stick. You could do that. And I'll bring it in. And you can see, I'm going to flip my top around here. I just noticed I rotated it. It's real tiny. What happens, I believe, and it's upside down, so I can flip that around with these two buttons here. This will rotate, that'll rotate. But if I come over here, same thing, horizontal rotate. So if I flip it around, you can see it flipping. I want it that way. Okay, I'm happy with that, the way it's laid out. I can flip it. I'll do it that way. I like it that way better. But what happens, it comes in as a scale factor. For some reason, it does metric. So if I type in 25.4, which is a metric conversion, and scale it, I'll make it fit the screen. There's my part. But that's 1-to-1. In other words, now it's not the original size. I can also, and if yours does this, you're just adjusting this whatever you need. I'm going to times that by 5. Okay, and by timesing it by 5, you can see I can kind of get it about the size I want it. That looks pretty close. If it's not, I'll scale it down again. Let's go 4 times 4. That looks a little better. Looks like it'll fit. And you can adjust it and place it in your drawing area. I'm going to just guesstimate here. I like where it's at right there. So I'm grabbing this piece to move it anywhere I want. And remember, we could flip it upside down, mirror it, right? And there's many deals you can do. But remember, once you get it in there, this is your best bet to move things around. If you hit finish OK at any time, it's a little harder to move. I'm not going to cover that so much. So we're going to practice that. So now we have our 57 Chevy. I'll finish sketch. Now the sign is ready to engrave that 57 Chevy Bel Air image on it. I'm going to go to home here so I can see it at a nice metric view. This view allows me to see it at a different angle. I can hold my middle mouse button, rotate it around all I want, and that makes it very, very easy to do it. If it doesn't, you didn't change your preferences, you need to hold down shift to do it with the old way. So I'm just going to go to isometric, the home view, and then save this, and it's going to update. It's going to say version description. All you do is hit save. Under here is our workspace area. We're going to click on our workspace area, and we're going to go to manufacturing. This is where we're going to do the CNC stuff. So I'm going to go manufacturing, and here's how we get to go machining this. The first thing we're going to do is select a setup, and we're going to do a new setup. This allows us to make the dummy material that we're going to use for machining. So I choose that, and now at this point you can see it has my X and my Y. Depending on how your machine's laid out, your X may go this way, your X may go, different ways. I'm going to believe that the long area on the machine is the X. If it isn't, then I can rotate that anytime by choosing different informations. But if I had to change my X direction, I can come in here and choose X and Y, model orientation, and I can say for the X, I want it to go on this one. Do you see how it changed it? And that's one way of doing that. I'm not going to do that because I like it the way it is. So just to give you a heads up, there's whole videos on how to set where you want to. This, the model box point, is where we can place our origin anywhere on the box. If you feel comfortable putting your sign in the corners, you're welcome to do that. And those are based off quadrants. I'm going to keep it here in the center. It's easy to start from the center. And the next step is to set my stock. Well, my stock is basically the model. And if I wanted to do it relative to size, it's going to give me relative size information. I don't want to go in depth on this, but probably the easiest one to use is to use your stock model. You're from your solid. If I want to do that, now it's going to be my material, the same finished part I have. I'm going to choose that, and then over here I'm going to give it a 1 for my work offset G54. You can give it a program number or a name right here. If I call this right now 1957 Chevy Bel Air, that's what my file is going to be called. So again, review on this real quick. You can always watch back. Our box point tells us where we want our origin. I'm going to go back to where I want it in the middle. Machine gives us our stock. As you can see, if I did a fixed size, then I can actually do a 4x12 by ½ inch. And the last tab gives us our name of our file, and we must set a work offset and hit OK. Now we just set up our stock model to match what we're working with. The next step is to create a toolpath. Now we're going to create the toolpath. We'll go up here to 2D, and we're going to look at Engrave. Engrave is the toolpath that we're going to be using this setup. So we'll go in here, and the first thing we do is take a look at the dialog box. And we have different tabs. We have Tool, which we have to design our tool. Geometry. Heights, that means your depth, your retracts. How you want to do your passes from radial to axial depth of cut, and linking information. Choose Select. And again, it may vary with a tool. The first thing we're going to do is select our tool. I have one set here. I don't know if I want to use that one or not. Let me see if I can delete that tool. We'll start fresh here. I'll delete that tool. So we'll go through the whole process. Now, definitely we're using milling tools. And then this is our filter button. In our filter button, we're trying to find a tool. We have Engrave, which makes the most sense. We have Spot Drill. That's very similar to what it is. To me, it's not so much a tool because I develop it as I go, but if I just choose engraving, you'll see what we do with engraving tools and chamfer tools. They're a little different. You can choose sample inch, and it'll give you a variety of them. You can choose your Fusion library. Now your library may look different than mine because I have a little bit more that I got hidden here. I have collected a lot of tools from the internet to bring in here, and I just use their numbers. But for the simplest of it, we're just looking for real simple information here. And what we're going to do is we would like to have a 1/4 inch, but I never see one in this. Yours may have it. I have older tools, but we're just going to choose any one tool that says chamfer and engraving type. And that's all we want to do. I can just choose the 60 and change all that information as I go on. I'll choose the 45 because that's what we're going to be using. And you can see it down here, and it doesn't even have a bottom down here and no pointy deal to cut with. If I choose this one, has a wider one. If I choose this one, same concept. It's the same type. And if I come over here and choose this tutorial one, it has more of a shape that I'm looking for. I don't know what yours would show. It doesn't matter because I'm going to show you how to modify that. I'll end up taking this one and I'll say select. Okay, it has everything I have, but it's not completed yet. At this point, I'm going to come over here and choose select, and I'm going to find my tool that's in my document program now. I have this tool. I'm going to right button mouse click on it, and I'm going to edit that tool. Editing that tool, I can look at the cutter definitions. This looks like a great engraving bit, but this is a little different here. So what I want to do is go through the whole process. Well, it says a ½ inch. Most of the routers that we'll be using will probably have a 1/4 or an 1/8 inch. I'll just stay with a 1/4 inch diameter as I go through. And the shaft will be 1/4 inch as well. Don't worry, this won't modify and change. Now, as I come to the overall length, the information here below, the shoulder length is just a ½ inch. The flute length is a 1/4 inch, 45 degrees. And so I have all this about where I want it. The only thing I want to look at is this tip information. If I analyze tip information, I know most of our tools go down to a very close point, and there is a ground point on there because sharp point is cut into 0, so we're going to call that 5/1000ths of an inch. And it won't change and modify this at all. As you can see, it just shows what it has. And there's our tool. Over here, some more tabs. You can go to shaft, holder, and cutting data. Cutting data basically sets your feeds and speeds. I'm not going to mess with that. Post processor is what we name the tool. Most routers don't have tool number problems, but I'm going to turn that on. Look at cutting data again. Everything looks good. I can turn off coolant. I forgot about coolant. It'll put a code in there that most routers won't have, so I'll disable that. So again, we went to cutter, we developed it. You could pause the video anytime. Quarter inch, half tip is a 5/1000. That's 0.005, 2 inches overall length. And if I had the tool in front of me, I can look at it. But the 45 is what we're cutting with. Now, number of flutes, it actually is 2 flutes on it. You can change that too. You just need to study what you have. And some of you might say it's not high speed still, it's carbide. You can change that. It really won't take too much effect of what we're going to be using. So we accept that. So we developed our tools. It's going to update based off the two flute. And here's my feeds and speeds. I'll set my, it's going to cut about 40 inches a minute. That's fine with me. The key thing here now is the geometry. What are we selecting? That's the main thing. We have to select all this geometry in here. And sometimes it's kind of hard to make sure you get it all. I like to come over here, go to my model, expand my model over here on the edge. I want to turn off the body so I can just see the 2D geometry. I want to just see the sketches. A lot easier to see. I turn that model back on, turn it off. If I chose the model, it would turn off my sketches too. We don't want to turn off our sketches. We want to leave our sketches active, the ones we want to see, and we want to just turn off the body. So now I can come over and see if I select everything. I select that one, I select that one, I select that one, and you may have an issue if you double click on it, because if you accidentally double click on it, it's going to give you this little floating box here. You can trash it, that means unselect it, or you can open it and leave it an open console if you ever had to control that. You just hit plus if you accidentally double select it. So just single select everything that is the color of the geometry you want to cut. Some of them like this really won't make a difference, but I'm going to do it anyway because it came through on my model. So I'm just touching them. Remember, if I double click accidentally, it's that little box will come up and I just hit the plus and then select the whole thing. That will happen if you click too fast or double click, and that's okay. So I'm just going to choose everything. Sometimes you can eliminate some stuff, but I'm just going to go ahead and use this, everything that came in it, and see what happens. So I selected everything. I can turn back on that body anytime I want, and you can see that that's what the engraving information is. Says I have 37 change. Now I'm going to choose the height one. So the first we chose a tool, we selected the geometry, and then the height. The depth I want to go down in there is very, very minimal, 50 thousandths of an inch, minus 50 thousandths. I'll choose OK. And that's all I did. Let's choose OK. So there's 3 little tabs I set. I'll turn off the model so I can see with the toolpath. There's my tool following that, and it makes it like a V groove bit, as you can see there. Now that we have our toolpath done, you can see it right here. I will go ahead and turn off my body again so I can see the toolpath in it. Now I want to be able to see this and how it would move with the tool. So I'm going to use this button over here called Simulate. It will give me a digital information of the toolpath and how the machine would run. Here's my geometry. Here's my toolpath information. I'm going to take the defaults. I'll take the speed down here at the bottom. I'll slow it down and I'll play it. I'll slow it down a little bit more, and we can speed it up so we can see it cut. If I want to turn off the 2D geometry, I can hit the sketch button, turn it off, and you can see it actually cutting in the raw material. As you can see, it's making the shape that we took originally off the internet, put it into Inkscape, create a plain SVG file, a scalable vector file, brought it into Fusion, created the geometry for the part itself, the sign, inserted the geometry, created stock setup, added a toolpath, developed the tool and its depth, and now we verified it. And here's what we have, a finished part that will come out through our CNC wood router, and we're developing our first little sign. I'll close this down. I'll turn back on my body so I can see it, and my sketches, I'm going to see those. The last step what we're going to do is we're actually going to post-process this for the machine. We'll come up under Actions. Actions has the simulation, what we just saw, and G1 is for post-processing. Here we want to be able to choose our machine. So under the machine post area right here, the first button we'll choose is this. And we're looking for one that will work with a Mach 3 system. Airsoft Mach 3 is the one I'm going to use. That's the controller on ZenBot machines, and any home-built machines can use that. So we'll use the Mach 3. We'll select that one. We can put our name of our part here. Mine's already generated. And we can locate where we want to save this. This is important. You want to choose where you want to save this. And so I'm just using it in this information right here. I'll put it right here. And you can see that's the folder I'm going to select. So I know where it's at. It could be my memory stick. And from this process, we're just going to go ahead and hit post. We'll hit post. And it's going to ask us where do we want to save our information. Well, I told it to save it in this directory. I got the name, and so I'm going to save this. And this information is for the machine. It's a G&M code, and this is the code that we're going to be using at the machine. It's as simple as that to go through a process. The only thing we need to do at this point, and I'll shut this down, it's saved where I can get to it, is to remember one thing that's important, where our origin is. If I jog my machine to the middle of this material that I'll be putting in there, and I zero X, Y, and Z at the top of the part and run that code, it will follow both X positive, Y positive values, X negative values, Y negative values, and the Z depth will be in the process. Any as far as just 50 thou, and that should be it. We're ready to run the part and the machine.